Hi, welcome to the third mini lecture of the integumentary system. And in this lecture, we're going to focus in on the appendages of the skin. So we've already talked about the basic structure of the skin and its functions. We've already learned a little bit about the layers of the epidermis and dermis and the types of cells that we find there. So now we're going to move on to the appendages, so the other component of the integumentary system. So if we take a look at this picture, you can see a lot of those accessory structures that we're going to talk about. So we can see these things kind of sticking off of the skin here, right? So we'll take a look at the structure of the hair. We can see some things kind of connected to the hair follicle that the hair grows out of. We can see oil glands there. We also have sweat glands that we'll take a look at. We have blood supply, arteries, veins, capillary loops here. We also have muscles, erector pili muscle that we'll take a look at. All of the yellow structures in this diagram. So you can see some free nerves, you can see some pressure and touch receptors, some motor nerves, some sensory nerves. All structures that we'll take a look at. At the surface, we can see some more accessory structures. We can see the pores, the ducts that travel down to our sweat glands. So I think those are kind of the biggies that we're going to look at. So we'll start off with looking at the accessory structures that are part of the nervous system. Now later this semester, we'll kind of take a more in-depth look at the nervous system's structure and function. But for today, we're just going to kind of look at the parts of the nervous system that are included in the integumentary system. So within the skin, we're going to have free nerve endings. So we can see free nerve endings kind of in this area on this diagram, up at the surface. Our free nerve endings are going to sense things like pain and temperature, and then they send that information towards the central nervous system, where it can then be interpreted. The next type of receptor that we see right here, we can see a receptor. So you can see it is right beneath the epidermis, so where the dermis and epidermis meet, right there. We have a Meissner's corpuscles. Meissner's corpuscles are also called tactile corpuscles. We find them in the dermal papillae. So remember, this is the dermis. All of this up here is epidermis. And these little bumps or hills in the dermis are dermal papillae. So you'll find them kind of embedded in there, really close to the epidermis. They are typically found in areas of the body that are have less hair in them. They receive information about light, touch. They're also a rapidly adapting sensory receptor, which we'll get into more when we get to the nervous system probably, but when they fire and send an action potential, they adapt really quickly, which means that they don't constantly send the signal. So they sense the touch and then they kind of ignore it. So for example, like if you put on a shirt, at first you feel the shirt, and then after a few minutes you don't really realize the shirt is touching your skin anymore. It rapidly adapts to that sensation. The Ruffini endings that you see here, they're kind of blue in this diagram. They remind me a little bit of like a sea fan or maybe kind of a mushroom shape here. These are more slow adapting receptors, so they're going to send a signal for a longer period of time, and they send information about skin stretching, and they're found in various areas of the body. We also have the hair root plexus. So these are the nerves that send information from the hair. So when you touch a hair or pull a hair, these are the nerves that are going to sense that information and send it to our brain. We have another corpuscle here. This one's the Pacinian corpuscle. You can see that these are quite large. They're going to be deeper in the skin than the Meissners over here. You can also see that they have layers to them. They kind of look like if you were to take an onion and cut it open and see all the layers inside there are kind of like the rings of the tree. And when you look at the slide of the skin under the microscope in lab, you'll be able to see that layering. These are deeper pressure receptors. They're deeper in the skin, but they are more rapidly adapting too, meaning they won't continue to send the information after a short period of time. Our next receptor over here are the Krauss end bulbs. You can see one right here. These are also called bulboid corpuscles too. It's another name for the same thing. They're a little more mysterious about what they actually do for us in our skin. Some research says that maybe they are thermoreceptors for like cold temperature. We find these they're kind of more rare. They're in specialized regions of the body. The penis and the clitoris is one place that you can find them. Also in the eye. So you will not in the skin samples like that we look at in lab when typically we're looking at samples of that wouldn't have these. So you probably will not be seeing those under the microscope, and I don't think there are any in the PAL labs either. The last one that we see here are the Merkel discs. And so you can see the Merkel discs also are right at the border between the dermis and the epidermis here. And you can see that they end in these little enlarged tips. The Merkel discs, so they're come up to the stratum basal, that last deepest layer of the epidermis. They detect pressure. They're a little more slow adapting. Also light touch receptors. They're also found in both areas that have hair and also areas that don't have hair, or glabrous, means like hairless skin. So that's the basic parts of the nervous system, of the sensory receptors that are there. Oh, one other one that I want to point out real quick. I don't know if they actually, it's not really in this diagram specifically. Let's draw one in. So there will be nerves that are going to be controlling the motor function of this too. This is an erector pili muscle. And so this is the muscle that when it contracts, it makes our hairs stand up. There would be a motor nerve that would send a message to that muscle to get it to contract. They are smooth muscles, but there would be a nerve that controls that. It would be a motor nerve sending a message from the brain to that particular muscle. Okay, so the next appendages that we're going to take a look at are sebaceous glands. Seba means greasy. Sebum is the oil that these glands produce. They produce it via holocrine secretion. We learned when you were watching the tissue lectures, the different types of glandular epithelial had different ways of secreting exocrine glands, and one of them was called holocrine secretion. Right? And I gave you the hint that to remember this, holo, like whole. It's a type of secretion where the whole cell is destroyed in the production and release of that oil. So the function of sebaceous glands is to produce oil, and the oil helps prevent water loss in our skin. Also, it creates an environment that is bactericidal, that kills bacteria, prevents them from living, certain bacteria from living on our body. It also acts as a lubricant. If you were to look at a sebaceous gland under the microscope, so down here we can see lots of cells that are in the sebaceous gland that are secreting oil. So you can see individual cells there, right? And you can see their nuclei. Up here, is the hair that sebaceous gland is actually attached to. So you can see the follicle out here, and then you can see the hair itself under the skin. Kind of this white area here is the actual hair. So they're found typically associated with hair follicles, just like in the diagram up here. You can see the sebaceous glands are kind of like clinging on to the hair follicle. They look kind of like clusters of grapes there. They're pretty distributed all over the body. One place that we don't really find oil glands is in areas where we have thick skin, so like the palms of our hands and the soles of our feet. And these become active at puberty. So when you go through puberty and you start producing hormones, some of those hormones activate these sebaceous glands to start producing oil. This is why little kids don't get super greasy, right? Like my 4-year-old can go weeks without washing her hair. It may get dirty because she's outside, she's dirty, but it doesn't really ever look greasy, right? My hair, after like a day, it looks greasy to me. My daughter and son, who are actually both on, well, my son is 13 and my daughter right now is 10, and they're both actually, like, my son's going through puberty, definitely. He'd be so embarrassed if he knew that I was saying this. And my daughter is kind of like just starting, and they both are getting greasy. Their face is greasy, their hair gets greasy, like she needs to wash her hair every day and she still resists. I'm like bathing's like the favorite part of my day, and why do kids not want to bathe, right? It's the only time I get alone, really. If you were to look at the different types of alveolar glands that we looked at during tissues, these oil glands are actually an example of the branched alveolar glands in structure. So you may see those in lab when we look at some of the slides associated with the integumentary system. Our next type of gland, let's move me into a better spot here. Let's go up here. There we go. Our next type of gland are the sudoriferous glands. The sudoriferous glands, over 3 million of these in our skin, which seems crazy. Someone actually counted that, right? Or at least estimated it. These are sweat glands. They produce sweat. And the type of secretion that the sweat glands use wasn't holocrine, it's merocrine secretion. And I gave you the hint that mero is kind of like merely. It means it's merely secreted, meaning the cell is not destroyed. Parts of it don't break off. These cells just secrete the oil, and then they continue secreting. So why do we have sweat? Sweat actually has a couple of different functions. It has a thermoregulatory function, right, that it cools us off, but it's also antibacterial. And so it keeps our skin at a pH that's kind of inhospitable for microorganisms to grow in on us, which is nice. Keeps things from growing on us that we don't want there. There are 2 types of sweat glands. There's the eccrine sweat glands. These are more numerous, so we have lots of these. And there's the apocrine sweat glands. And these we have less of, and they're typically associated with hairs. So in this picture here, you can see an eccrine sweat gland, right? It's a gland, it has a duct, goes to the surface, you have a pore, and you can see sweat spilling out onto the surface here. Now the apocrine gland, there's one over here in this picture. It looks similar to the eccrine sweat gland, and it's actually like kind of a little bit bigger. Both of these remind me of like blobs of ramen noodles. It has a duct, but the duct empties into a hair follicle, and then the sweat goes to the surface through the hair follicle. There's also a couple other types of sweat glands. They're modified sweat glands. In our ear, we have ceruminous glands. Those are actually, they produce wax. So earwax is actually like a highly modified version of sweat. Fun fact. Another modified sweat gland is the mammary glands. So another fun fact, breast milk is actually sweat with lots of protein and fat in it, but also a sudoriferous gland. So the 2 types of glands, the eccrine and the apocrine, we're going to take a little closer look at those, and you should see these on the slides when we're in lab or in PAL also. This type of gland here, we can see, is associated with a hair, right? So the one that was associated with the hair was the apocrines. So that's what we're seeing in this picture here. And if you look at under the microscope, if you look carefully, you should recognize these cells. So around the edge of, so this is the lumen, right? The space inside of that little gland. So this is basically where the sweat would accumulate as it's produced. But the cells that line it, that are all the way around the edge, we have one row. They look kind of cube shaped. They have nice round nuclei, right? So what kind of tissue are we looking at? It is a type of epithelial. It's one row, so it's simple. And about as tall as they are wide, cuboidal. So it looks like simple cuboidal epithelial tissue is surrounding these glands. In some spots though, so if you look carefully, so over here it looks kind of simple, but then over here, it almost looks like there's two rows of cubes stacked on top of each other. So possibly stratified. It's kind of hard to tell in this particular picture. So there's about 2,000 of them that we have in our body, and these also become active at puberty. So this is what produces the stinky sweat. So the ones that are associated with hairs is the stinky sweat, and that's because the sweat that they produce is higher in lipids and proteins and salts. It's kind of whitish, yellowish in color, and bacteria love to eat it. So when they eat it, they produce gas and it stinks. So it's not really the sweat that stinks as much. It's not actually you, it's your bacteria. And we find these associated with hairs. So they're incredibly numerous in areas of our body where we have large concentrations of hairs, like our axillary region, armpits, genital regions. They have the ability to respond to hormone levels, and this is why they become active at puberty. So this is another reason why kids who haven't went through puberty yet are not super stinky, right? But once they start to go through puberty and these become activated, their bacteria start munching away and we get stinky. The other type of pseudophorus gland is going to be the ones that are not associated with hairs. So we can see one here. Right? There's kind of a cross section through here, so you can see the ducts a little better, right? And over here, we can see a cross section under the microscope, right? You can see each of the ducts. You can see it's made up of individual little cube-shaped cells, so it looks like a simple cuboidal again. It has a duct that goes to the surface and empties in a pore, so this is an eccrine sweat gland. These are more common. We have lots of these in our hands, for example, our forehead, our feet. So sweat areas, they get pretty sweaty, but they don't have as much hair. The sweat that's produced here is mainly water. It's like 99% water and a little bit of salt and waste. So it is a one way we can get rid of some nitrogen waste, but it doesn't have the component of the sweat that makes us stinky. So that's the eccrine sweat glands. So you should look for both of those in the models and see if you can find some on the slides. So this table here does kind of a nice job of comparing the three types of glands, the two types of sweat glands and the oil glands, as far as their function, what they secrete, how they secrete it, where the secretions come out, where we find them in the body. So kind of a nice summary of everything that we just looked at. And then the next thing we're going to take a look at is the hair, which is also an appendage of the skin. The hair has lots of parts to it. We're not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details about it. So first we can see this gland. That's a bulbous sebaceous gland, right? It looks kind of like clusters of grapes, right? You can see that little muscle, the erector pili, that are also associated with the hair. On the outside of the hair, surrounding the hair, we have the hair follicle. and so the hair grows out of the follicle that's underneath the skin. Over here, we're seeing the same thing, but we've sliced away half of it so you can see on the inside. You can see some yellow kind of bubbly tissue down here. You should recognize that. Those cells are adipocytes. Yes, this is adipose tissue. The hair goes down into, so we have up here the epidermis, here we have the dermis. So the hair down at the bottom, we have this little area here where we have blood supply down there. That's called the papilla. And right above it, we have this area where the melanocytes hang out. So it's kind of dark area here, just like in our skin, we have melanocytes in our hair that produce melanin that give it its color. The bottom part of the hair, at the bottom, the part that is kind of bulbous, right, is the bulb of the hair. If you were looking at this other view, this cross section here, you'd see that the hair has some different layers. It has a lot of layers to it that you can kind of see in this picture. The ones that are kind of most important to us. In the very inside, I'm going to shade it in blue here real quick. That innermost part of the hair is called the medulla. So that's the innermost layer. It has a kind of a softer keratin structure in it. The next layer out here is called the cortex. And we'll see other parts of our body have medullas and cortexes too. This is the middle layer, and it has a much harder keratin in it. And then the outermost layer of the hair, which you can see is kind of these thin, flat cells, is the cuticle. So this is the part that you touch, the outer layer, it's keratin. Right when our hair erupts in our head, it's dead. So when you touch the outside of your hair, you're touching the cuticle. The rest of these layers, so all the other layers that you see here are actually all connective tissue. They're root sheaths and membranes that surround the hair. So you see them when you're below the skin, but once the hair erupts, those layers are no longer there. So keep in mind the hair, its job is partly thermoregulation, some sensory reception, because there are nerves that serve the hair's protection. In certain areas of our body, they have more functions, like in our nose, they participate in filtration. So that's kind of it for the hair. And the last appendage is our nails, which protect the tips of our fingers and our toes. Nails are actually they're actually epidermis. So they're very heavily keratinized epidermal cells, so keratinized that they become stiff, right? And people have different amounts of keratin in them, so some people have nails that are a little more bendy. We use them as tools. They also protect the tips of our fingers and our toes. We can learn a lot about someone's health from changes in their fingernails. So by looking at someone's fingernails, you can sometimes tell if they have an issue with their thyroid, deficiency in certain nutrients like iron. People with diabetes experience some changes in their fingernails. The nail, when we do this section through the finger, back here, this is actually where the nail grows from. So this is the nail matrix, and that's where the new growth comes from. And it pushes out from there and pushes, and nails are dead just like the surface of our epidermis, and pushes those cells out here as they die. If you've ever lost a nail, right, you have to wait for it to grow back from here, and it'll kind of slowly creep its way out. Okay, and so that's it for the appendages of the skin. So we have one more micro lecture on skin left, which is going to look at disorders and diseases related to our skin.